There are many ballet schools around the world. The French, Russian, and American schools are considered to be the most famous and popular. This was the case until the mid-1980s. No one imagined that another school could become embroiled in the dispute between these three. However, nothing lasts forever. In 1988, the Belgian ballet school, sometimes referred to as the Flemish school, emerged from behind these long-standing schools. The main reason for its rise was one of its representatives, a young man named Francois van Varenberg. Today, we will take a closer look at the decline of the star career of the Brussels muscleman in the late 1990s and early 2000s, and recall his triumphant start on American stages. It will be interesting and informative. Let's go! Unlike many other actors, Jean-Claude Van Damme made it on his own. After moving to America in the early 80s, he started from the bottom, and for some time, his efforts went unnoticed. He had to make do with small earnings. The future actor even worked as a pizza delivery boy. In between his main job, the Belgian often attended all kinds of auditions, and after one of them, he landed a role in the film Monaco Forever. This was not Van Damme's first appearance on the big screen. Back in 1979, he appeared in the Belgian film Femme entre chien et loup. Rutger Hauer played one of the leading roles, but the most famous Belgian actor went unnoticed. The same thing happened with Monaco Forever. The 48-minute film received devastating reviews from audiences and critics alike, nearly ending Van Damme's career. His career was saved thanks to his acquaintance with Chuck Norris and the Cannon Group studio in 1984. Norris invited Van Damme to be a punching bag in the film, Missing in Action, though Van Damme is not seen in the film itself. He worked as a stuntman somewhere in the background, and his work as a punching bag for Norris would bear fruit in the future. Before that, Van Damme had decided to star in the science fiction film Predator. There are many rumors and legends about this role. One rumor is that Van Damme did not read the contract carefully and signed up for the film without realizing that his face would not be shown on screen. Another rumor is that he behaved too provocatively on set and tried to perform his famous Belgian kick on someone. According to Jesse Ventura, this is why Van Damme was fired. However, a third version claims that he was fired simply because it was too short and looked comical next to Arnold. Initially, the Predator resembled an alien bug, so Van Damme's height wasn't as noticeable. However, when the design was revised, he no longer needed to be present on set. A couple of shots with Van Damme remained in the film. They say that he was the one who ran into the jungle from an angry Mac. In 1986, Van Damme landed the role of one of the antagonists in the film No Retreat, No Surrender, playing a Russian fighter named Ivan. The Belgian actor was in desperate need of a breakthrough role and did everything he could to get noticed. One was generally lucky in that regard with No Retreat, No Surrender. The script was written during filming, and the actors improvised on set. Van Damme gave 200% for his $250 a day salary. He beat up half of the actors. If the script called for one punch, he would throw 4. When asked to throw 2 punches, he would throw 10. Actors Timothy Baker and Pete Cunningham were among Van Damme's unluckiest victims. In the ring, Van Damme beat Cunningham until he lost consciousness. Cunningham was carried out of the ring unconscious twice during filming, and Van Damme hit Baker several times instead of the planned 1 punch. Baker was so outraged by Van Damme's behavior that a few years later, he appeared in court, where Van Damme was being punished for injuring actor Jackson Pinckney during the filming of Cyborg. At the trial, Baker claimed that Van Damme disregarded human life and continued to beat him despite the protests of the film's director, Corey Yuen. While filming this movie, Van Damme was barely making ends meet. After each shooting day, he would often ask the other actors to push his trabant, as the car would not start without this maneuver. The film was not a big hit at the box office, but it easily recouped its budget. It was his role in this film that led to his casting in Bloodsport. He knocked on the door of the Cannon Group studio with this film, trying to reach one of the producers Chuck had introduced him to. He was very lucky, although it might not have seemed so in 1986. Van Damme was given a script that had been gathering dust in the studio for a couple of years. The $1.5 million film was problematic during production and was shelved after filming ended in 1986. Test screenings went poorly, and the studio did not want to release the film in theaters. Thanks to this, an action movie like Black Eagle was born, in which Van Damme played a bad Russian once again. This time, his name was Andriusha, since no one knew about Bloodsport at the time. Van Damme signed a contract with Imperial Entertainment for 2 films, in which he could have played minor roles. Although Van Damme was not yet a star, several changes were made to the Black Eagle script for his character just before filming began. In keeping with tradition, Van Damme immediately began beating up all the actors who crossed his path, including the main character, Sho Kosugi. Rumor has it that Kosugi endured the precise blows to his face that Francois definitely delivered for a long time. In the end, however, Kosugi lost his temper and started beating the Belgian actor in return. The actors were dragged away, and Van Damme refused to let Kosugi defeat him in the film's finale. The ending of the film was quickly rewritten, and Van Damme passed away heroically under a boat propeller. After working on such a wonderful film, Van Damme realized that this ship propeller could ruin his career. Then an event occurred that could determine the actor's future. He decided to become an editor, believing that Bloodsport could save his career. He persuaded the bosses at Cannon Group to give him all the footage and allow him to edit it into a real movie. He managed to produce a version of Bloodsport that satisfied all the producers. In 1988, 2 years after filming ended, the film finally made it to theaters. Black Eagle never made it to theaters, which may have worked in the Belgian actor's favor. Bloodsport did very well at the box office given its budget, but grossed $12 million in the United States and another $18 million worldwide. In France, 1 million people saw the film starring the legendary Belgian actor, and his career took off. But first, there was the film Cyborg, which nearly ruined her again. Director Albert Pyun assembled the script for Cyborg from 2 projects developed by the Cannon Group studio. The first was a sequel to the unsuccessful Masters of the Universe starring Dolph Lundgren, and the second was based on Marvel Comics Spider-Man. The Cannon Group needed to recoup the money already spent on developing these films, with the total cost of preparing the 2 films already exceeding $1.5 million. All the work, costumes, and sets were used in Cyborg. Cyborg itself cost only $500,000, as the Cannon Group studio was already struggling due to a large number of failures. The film was shot in a very short time. Almost all of the actors played several roles at once, which naturally affected the quality. Test screenings of the footage unexpectedly turned into a disaster, with only 1 out of 100 viewers giving the film a positive rating. The truth is that no one wanted to shelve this film. The producers were frustrated and wanted to release Cyborg in theaters as quickly as possible to make some money and get rid of it. However, Van Damme convinced them to give him time to re-edit the film. Incidentally, the aforementioned lawsuit took place during this time. Van Damme accidentally stabbed Jackson Pinckney in the eye with a weapon, and Pinckney sued him. Van Damme had to pay the actor the amount he demanded, though the exact amount was not specified. The film did well at the box office, but failed to replicate the success of Bloodsport. With a budget of $2 million, the film grossed $10 million in the United States. Theaters and earned a few cents worldwide, though the exact figures are now impossible to find. After Cyborg, Kickboxer became a global hit despite its low budget of only $1.5 million. It grossed over $40 million worldwide, $15 million of which came from American box office sales. French cinemas were once again full, but this time, German film lovers were not far behind. Following Kickboxer's success, it was time for Van Damme's final film with the Cannon Group studio. Most would agree that the least well-known film of the Belgian star's heyday was Death Warrant, likely because it was produced by the now-defunct studio. Van Damme should be grateful to Cannon for launching his career with Bloodsport. However, as Van Damme's star rose, Cannon's star dimmed. Van Damme was not to blame for this. His films brought money to the studio. However, the studio's larger projects, such as Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone, failed miserably. Another interesting point is that, according to Van Damme, he stole the role in Death Warrant from under Seagal's nose. They are said to have quarreled over various barbs they directed at each other in interviews. For example, Van Damme suspected that Seagal's sudden weight gain was an attempt to change his appearance and hide from the mafia. But it all started with Death Warrant. When filming of Death Warrant was coming to an end, Cannon Studios went bankrupt. Van Damme was no longer concerned about this, and having finished working on the film, left to shoot Lionheart. Cannon's property began to pass into the hands of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but this process was slow, so Death Warrant lay on the shelf for over a year. Lionheart was essentially a random film for Van Damme, who was compelled to participate in this film due to his obligations to appear in 2 films for Imperial Entertainment, an obligation that forced Van Damme to personally come up with the idea for Lionheart and participate in writing the script. Van Damme's ideas included a Scottish kilt on one of the fighters, a white cat for Attila, as a tribute to James Bond, a fight that ended with one blow, and of course his bare butt in one of the scenes of the film, which he also lobbied for. At the time of its release, Lionheart became the Belgian's most successful film in terms of box office, grossing $24 million at the box office alone. The film's budget was also the largest for the actor at the time, amounting to $6 million. There is no data on global box office receipts, but there are numbers of viewers in France and Germany, which were record-breaking for Van Damme. Although Lionheart was a box office hit, Death Warrant was eventually sold to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. However, since no one wanted the film, they edited it just for the sake of it. Many versions of the film begin with the credits of the now defunct Cannon Film Studio, but Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, which distributed the film in the United States, replaced the studio in the credits. Interestingly, thanks to Van Damme's growing popularity, the film, which was released 2 years after filming ended, without advertising and already forgotten by everyone, was still a box office success. With a budget of $4 million, the film grossed $16 million in the US. How much Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer earned from video rentals remains a mystery. Following these films, Van Damme's popularity shot up. His next film, Double Impact, broke the actor's box office record once again. Jean-Claude was keen to play twins who were very different from each other. The Belgian actor believes that this kind of role would enhance his image and demonstrate his ability to play very different characters. However, not everyone saw the film's potential. In an interview, director Albert Pien, who made the 1989 film Cyborg, said that in the late 1980s, Van Damme had approached him with a proposal to work together on a film called The Corsican Brothers, about 2 twin brothers. Pien claims that he told Van Damme he thought the idea was ridiculous and advised him not to star in such nonsense and to quit drinking altogether. According to Pien, after that conversation, he never saw or spoke to Van Damme again. In the United States, Double Impact grossed $30 million. While there are no global figures available, almost 2 million people saw the film in France alone, and 1.5 million saw it in Germany. Therefore, the figure of $70 million in total box office receipts is quite believable. Van Damme entered the early 1990s as a superstar. Each subsequent film grossed more money, which was followed by an increase in his fees and sense of self-importance. His addiction to illegal substances kept pace with his success, but as long as he was profitable, no one cared. In 1993, however, he nearly stumbled with the film Nowhere to Run. Originally, Nowhere to Run was supposed to be a completely different film, with a script written by Joel Esterhazy and directed by Richard Marquand. Marquand had wanted to direct it himself in the late 1980s, but he died of a heart attack in 1987, leaving behind Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Esterhazy and Marquand's script did not include any violent elements and was almost completely devoid of action. The only similarity between the final film and the original script was the storyline involving an escaped convict and a widow with 2 children. The plot focused solely on a love story. Mel Gibson was supposed to play the lead role. However, after Marquand's death, the project was abandoned. In the early 1990s, screenwriter Leslie Bohem reworked the script for action star Jean-Claude Van Damme. Joe Esterhazy publicly disowned Nowhere to Run, claiming that none of his original script remained in the final film. In an interview, Van Damme admitted that he did not like the story at all, but the screenwriter promised to revise the script and improve its quality. Van Damme believed him and accepted the role. When it came time to shoot, it turned out that no one had even tried to change the script. At the time of its release, Nowhere to Run was Van Damme's second highest budget film after Universal Soldier and his highest paid. Van Damme received $2.5 million for his participation in the film. At the box office, it took a step back from his previous works and generally flopped in the US. However, the rest of the world saved the project by bringing it to the break-even point. 1994 was the peak year for Van Damme in terms of box office receipts, with Time Cop finally surpassing the $100 million mark in total receipts. And ahead lay the even more expensive film Street Fighter, which was supposed to be a big hit. Street Fighter did not fail at the box office, but terrible audience reviews and the Belgians' behavior on set played their part. The actor's career then began to falter. Sudden Death, a film with a telling title, became the Belgian actor's last work, for which he received an impressive fee. He was paid $5 million. You probably won't be surprised to learn that the film had many problems, even before Van Damme joined the project. The script was originally offered to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who declined due to his busy schedule. He had signed on to star in True Lies, and then he was supposed to star in Junior. After Schwarzenegger, the offer went to Sylvester Stallone, Stallone read the script and turned it down, saying that it needed work. The third actor to receive the offer was Bruce Willis. However, Willis turned down sudden death because he was busy preparing to film Die Hard with a Vengeance. Following Willis's refusal, the filmmakers approached Van Damme, who agreed to take the lead role. However, after that, the film's budget was cut by almost half, and the existing script was heavily reworked just before filming began. Randy Feldman, who wrote the first draft of the script, claims that it was intended as a parody of action movies. The only scene from his work that made it into the final film was the fight with the hockey club mascot. Sudden Death was Van Damme's first box office flop. Although it grossed $64 million, its $35 million budget meant it was unlikely to recoup its costs, even with video sales. Ultimately, the film turned a profit, but the studio immediately canceled the sequel, for which the script had already been written by the time Sudden Death was released. Van Damme tried to save his career on his own. His contact with Universal Studios allowed him to release the film The Quest, in which he also directed, but he failed to repeat the success of Bloodsport. The film was also a box office flop, after which Universal Studios terminated his contract with the actor. At that point, Van Damme also turned down the role of the antagonist in Warner's expensive action film Sandstorm, in which Wesley Snipes was to play the hero. Ultimately, this did not happen, and the project was cancelled. The rest of Van Damme's career was pretty grim. Realizing where his career was headed, he started drinking and partying excessively and turned to drugs. It was around this time that he was beaten up at the Scores Club. This story is mainly known through the accounts of Mickey Rourke and Chuck Zito, with whom Van Damme had a disagreement. According to Zito, he made the mistake of greeting Van Damme and Rourke on that ill-fated night when they had decided to spend some time at the club. Zito said that the cheerful Belgian immediately started acting aggressively towards him. Zito decided not to escalate the situation. After greeting Van Damme and hearing the deliberate mispronunciation of his surname, he hurriedly left. Perhaps that would have been the end of it, but one of the club's employees approached Zito and asked him why he was smiling at Van Damme, who was saying bad things about him behind his back. As soon as Zito walked away from Van Damme, it turned out that the club employee had asked the Belgian for an autograph, telling him that they had a mutual acquaintance, Chuck Zito. Van Damme responded with mockery and ridicule. After this, Zito approached the resting Van Damme to ask him to explain himself. However, the Belgian actor's arrogant response was too much for Zito. Zito says that he lost his temper, jumped on Van Damme, and beat him for about 30 seconds. A chair flew out from under the actor, along with dark glasses and black belts, which flew in different directions. However, when Zito was ready to finish off Van Damme, security dragged him away. Van Damme himself always avoids this topic, and the only thing he says is that none of this happened. Zito claims that he even needed hospitalization because he hurt his hand hitting Jean-Claude on the head. Zito's account is corroborated by Mickey Rourke and the club's owners. However, many witnesses saw Van Damme calmly leading the club, getting autographs with no signs of injury. As the courts did not pursue this matter, many believe that it was just a minor altercation which the press has exaggerated. As for Van Damme's film career, it wasn't just bad, it was terrible. His films gradually stopped being released in cinemas. Legionnaire, which was scheduled for release after Knockoff flopped, was hastily removed from the release schedule. This was followed by Inferno, a $26 million film directed by Rocky's John Avildsen that went straight to video. Then came the sequel to Universal Soldier, whose poor performance at the box office put an end to Francois' theatrical career. The budgets for his films began to plummet, and he was no longer shown in American cinemas. Some of his films were released in cinemas in Europe. These include The Order, Derailed, Replicant, In Hell, and Wake of Death, which were released in Spain but did not make much money. Consequently, in the mid-2000s, Van Damme switched to video distribution. One small success was the crime comedy JCVD, which was widely released in France but still failed at the box office. After 2010, Van Damme occasionally tried to remind people of his existence, with Sylvester Stallone's film The Expendables greatly assisting him in this endeavor. However, nothing came of it, and his attempts to establish himself on television were also unsuccessful. Van Damme continues to appear occasionally in films with intimidating titles and ratings. He does so infrequently, which is probably not a bad thing. He could clearly appear in such productions more often if he wanted to. It is unfortunate that he changed his character and overcame his addiction to various substances too late. perhaps things could have turned out differently, and after a couple of flops, the studios might have given him more chances instead of giving up on him. So we've seen how Van Damme went from pizza delivery guy to superstar, then lost it all due to drugs and unprofessional behavior. Sadly, he started changing too late. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments, which star should we cover next? See you soon!